Beautiful. Welcome to this week's coaches call. This one was mine. And as part of the homework, obviously, we all went and watched a specific podcast. Now, though this is slightly on a tangent to being very linear within powerlifting, the aim was to actually get a topic that cultivated a bit more thought around beliefs, values, and ethos. And so this is going to resonate around 10 main points. And we'll see if we get further than that. I doubt it. To list those off, so if you're listening, you get an idea of where we're going with this. Point 1, stop caring about other people's opinions. 2, difficult conversations. 3, heavy burden of unmade decisions. 4, overcoming fear of what people think. 5, you must choose your regrets. 6, work on one thing. 7, become the hero by focusing on your pain. 8, success is the only revenge. 9, you've already achieved things you said would make you happy. And 10, nobody will hate you for doing worse than them. So let's go into the first one. Which was framed around the idea, stop caring about other people's opinions, and starting with kind of an explanation as a reminder that you're going to die, that everyone is going to die. This is actually an ethos that I somewhat live by. But before I go into the depths of it, Lucy, how did you find this as a principle?
I feel like for me personally, this is something I've always battled with internally. I used to be like incredibly self-conscious about what other people thought of me because at the time I was a 14-year-old in a gym and it felt like a really foreign environment that I should never have been in. So I think as a statement, you shouldn't care what people think. I absolutely agree with this 100%. More often than not, you're going to be surrounded by strangers or people that don't contribute a significant amount to your life. So why should their opinions play on your mind in the slightest? I think for me personally, as I've grown up, I've really come to basically have a really small circle of people that I care about, whose opinions I value. And it's those people who I strive to impress, that I would listen to, that I would take advice from. And I think that as I've grown up, I've really come to realize that it really doesn't matter what people think. Um, if you're walking down the street and you're in your pajamas going to the shop and somebody laughs at you, that's okay. You're going to be a quick comment that they take home, maybe to tell their roommate or their partner at home that, oh, someone was walking around in their pajamas. You're never going to be a huge significant part of their life that they're going to continuously think and dwell on what they've just seen. And I think that like massively played into kind of how I've grown up, from being a 14-year-old that felt like a fish out of water in a public gym with adults, because I mean I was a child at that point, and I used to be so conscious about what I wore and what I talked about and what people thought of me. But now moving forwards, like what I would tell myself as an athlete and my own clients is that you can pick who you care about, just like you don't care about strangers themselves. How often do you see something that is unusual, isn't quite the norm? Within a few hours, within usually a few minutes, you've completely forgotten about that scenario. So if you do see someone at the gym and they're in a wife beater and their nips are out and you're not flattered by what you're seeing, within a few hours you might go and tell your friend that you see something, some hairy chests or some really short shorts. But realistically, you're not going to be thinking about that a week later. What you do in that session, what you do on that day is more important. Um, a scenario like I do think back to is that when I first started training in this gym here, I didn't put the clips on. And I was like, yeah, I'm cool. Like, I'm quite strong. I'm going to do a big squat. I'm going to try, set myself in here and kind of make a name for myself. First day I trained there, I tipped the bar. I like didn't rack the weights and everything fell off. So as if this, if you take anything from this call, always use clips, please. For just a safety announcement. But I think I still think back to that now. But if I ask anyone that was there with me on that day, I don't think anyone else would remember that happened. So nobody really cares nobody's opinions really matter except for those that you choose to have in your corner and to have in your circle.
I want to pin the follow up to Alice. So both as either an athlete or coach, and yeah, I'm picking on you straight away. Is there a moment that you've either experienced as like in your career coming into being a coach or like as an athlete where either you've made decisions or nearly made decisions off the back of what you thought other people would think?
Absolutely. Like, I am a people pleaser and I do really care what other people think of me or the things I do. And it's advice that I would give to friends, to athletes. Like, other people's opinions don't matter. They don't care about what you're wearing in the gym. But I know myself that that can be really, really difficult to actually put into practice. You are going to have to put yourself into difficult situations and you probably are going to be worried what people think of you. But I think then once you put yourself in that situation, you kind of have no choice but to just own it. So like public speaking, I did the warm-up for the Thrive 5 last year and I was so nervous about how many people were going to be there. They're all going to be watching me. They're all going to be thinking, oh, is this a good running warm-up? I'm not a runner and I was doing a running warm-up. They were probably thinking, oh, this isn't what we do for a running warm-up. But I just sort of had to own the experience and own being in that moment. And then I was really proud of how I came off the back of it. And I don't even know whether I even thought afterwards, oh, I hope everyone enjoyed it, because I had a couple of feedbacks from people just saying that they had fun and that it was good. And then after that, it was just like, it's done now. There's nothing else I can do about it.
I want to, there's a bit that they effectively were floating around the whole like, fuck people's opinion. And there's a sentence that Brandon, you said to me in Sky of Another Topic, talking about social media, about that my self-esteem does not rely on the likes and shares or following and so on. Do you remember that conversation? In the realm of like creating content as being a coach or like putting yourself on social media, how have you felt the weight of this as a point of like the perception and who you have to carry yourself as?
I think a big thing that I think back to a lot of the time is anytime I'm scrolling and I see something and do I remember what I saw yesterday on my Instagram feed? No, unless it was highly, highly valuable. Of course I don't. And so for me, it's really about like pushing to make stuff that resonates with people. And in order to like express yourselves and in order to think, you have to risk offending someone. And that's okay. Like, if everyone has different thoughts, everyone has different opinions. Sometimes you'll say your thoughts and your opinions, and someone will be offended by it, and they'll let you know, and that's okay. But the people who that does resonate with, those are the people who you're actually trying to resonate with. Like, you're actually trying to reach out and you're actually trying to speak to. And so, bar those people, whose opinion do you really care about? You know, if it's hate online, it happens all of the time. And from me, the vast majority of the people that have made it very, very abundantly clear to me that they do not agree with my opinion, well, I've never met them. I doubt I will, you know, unless I see them at an international comp. I don't know. I'll probably never see most of these people. So it's just something to say, like, the vast majority of people's opinions, while yes, it's like the whole phrase of sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You kind of need to take that and really, really ride with it whenever you go on social media and understand that like you are standing for you. You're standing for the things that you believe in. You're not standing to have that validated by other people.
Adam, you wanted to add something to that?
So you mentioned the hate on social media or hate in general, and there was a point that I believe it was Alex made that hate signifies you're doing something right. So I think that's something you should sort of see it as a positive rather than say, or rather than question yourself. So that I just wanted to add that onto it because I think that's really important.
I think that's one of the things that there's a framing in is taken into business, but seeing things as features, not bugs. Of saying like that if you're trying to make a point, if you actually have some beliefs and ethos, and like to have those beliefs, you have to have the absence of other people's beliefs and ethos, and so you can't share everything. And so by proxy of that, you're going to have to disagree. And so if you're going to proudly speak on things you truly believe in, you like it's a feature of being successful. It's a feature of being authentic that other people will disagree with you. Kind of part of the game. one of the things, the quote that from this section I really loved was, "Don't follow what people do because you don't want to have you don't want what most people have." That's a bastardized version of what the sentence actually says. Ryan, is there a time, like when you started out in your lifting career, where you were identifying of being like, I want to do something different from the people around me?
As in people around from social media or people that I was
No,
surrounded
like when
with?
you started to pursue powerlifting, like I can only assume in your realm it wasn't the norm, or it was kind of your choice. What led you that direction?
I think it was a case of because it was quite unique. Like I liked that challenge. I liked that thought process of this is a unique challenge that there isn't many people at that time is involved with. When it comes to like people's opinions as to the direction I was going down, I like to think that I've got a very positive support network. Like Lucy said, the people that I surround myself with, they didn't so much know what I was getting myself into, but it was more a case of if you feel like this is the right choice for you, you fucking go and do it, and you do it to the best of your ability. And it was around that time because we started following each other. Like I think we've probably known each other
Long time.
I'd like to say the longest out of all of us. And I just remember I was like, shit, like when we go on about remembering people's posts or remembering what like those posts that you do watch on social media, and if you remember it or you don't remember it, there was loads on there that I'm like, oh fuck, that still resonates with me a year after. There are times where you were just, and this isn't a suck up, this is an example because it's easiest to remember because you're here, but it resonates. It's like, this is what I aspire to be. Like I think we might have been in similar positions, but you just had that authenticity. I was like, I fucking want that. So yeah, like I didn't have a struggle with people around me in terms of opinions. I would like to think I'm quite fortunate in that sense. But I think it was a lack of opinions of how I can get to that next step, if that makes sense.
Love that. So I will, like, if everyone's happy, I'll move on to the second one in case no one's jumping. On the second one, the heading that I've just left it with is "The life you want is on the other side of a few hard conversations." Now this applies to a ton of stuff, and I've seen this in my life a lot of times of like the inaction that we maintain for a long time, that you end up with more problems just because you're not willing to front that one thing. Kurm, I'm gonna ask you is like either just in if it's been personal life but if it's been in coaching or even in being an athlete, there's been a time where like whether it's a hard conversation or just something you weren't wanting to step up against, was there something that you like put off for a long time?
Yeah, I think fully committing to coaching has been one of the biggest things. I don't know if everyone here knows the story, but I think Callum does, about me going back to school for physical therapy. That was always been the route that I've been told to go on, and coaching and strength conditioning has never really been, I wouldn't say an option, but a route that's been frowned upon. But it's where my heart is, and I enjoy it. This past weekend solidified it. Every competition I go to solidifies it. But yeah, I've always been told to get a higher education, in which I technically do. I have a bachelor's degree. But even then, I feel like I've been made to feel like that's not enough. So yeah, jumping into coaching has been kind of that barrier that I've been keeping my eye on, but never fully committing until I met Callum and started the internship.
Love that. I think there's one of the sections they talk about this, so I won't hone on it 'cause I can't remember exactly where it is, but where it's the like someone makes you feel like you shouldn't do X, right? So like my whole career, it was and love to the both of them, but my parents being like, this would be a terrible choice, this won't make you money, this would be a bad. And it was my master's, then it was powerlifting, and then it was moving into a different career and so on. And every time the thing they bring it back to is like, if you give a voice to that person, who's that person? It's like, okay, well, it's my mum. And be like, my mum's choosing my career. I'm a 32-year-old man. That's fucking embarrassing. And sometimes like highlighting the voice of the person that is deciding these things for you, and like they're deciding by the fact that it's forcing your inaction of being like, wow, mum picks what Kum does with his life. I mean, like sometimes, is it the same? Go on, Kum, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, no, when Alex said that in the podcast, I like audibly gasped and like, that is exactly my situation.
Yeah, sometimes playing it out and being like, who is the voice in my head saying you can't do that? And being like, wow, that's the person I select to have that that control of my life. Cheryl, what are you gonna say?
So just like on the subject of bachelor's degrees, I did my bachelor's degree in forensic science and criminology, and that was the career path that I believed that I wanted. I wanted to go into blood spatter analysis. Had a great time at uni. I did my dissertation on blood spatter analysis. Had a great time. And then when it came down to it, and I looked at the options, I realized that maybe I wasn't actually that passionate about that path. At least, you know, the options that were laid out before me. So I decided not to do it. And when I have this conversation about my bachelor's degree, people get really excited, and then they go, so what do you do now? And I'm like, I'm a powerlifting coach. And I used to be so ashamed that I would make so many excuses as to why I didn't go into that path. And then actually I realized that I was just trying to please these people. It's like Alice said, I'm trying to be a people pleaser. And I stopped making the excuses. And I started saying actually really proudly that I decided that wasn't for me, and I pursued something that was really fulfilling to me. So just along those lines, like I stopped trying to please those people. I stopped trying to have them as the narrators for my life, because I realized that actually what they thought was irrelevant.
There's a framing that's used on that. If I get the line wrong, anyone's welcome to correct me. The when people are saying like, I can't believe you do that, or I wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't make that choice, what they're saying is you're living a life I would not prefer. And to being like, is that correct? Yeah, okay, thank you, Brandon. Literally, if Brandon says yes, I'm like, oh, thank fuck. Because we listen to the same media way too much. But yeah, the idea of just being like, and you live a life I would not prefer, and that's okay. Like sometimes we take the only language that people possess of just being like, I wouldn't do that. And we see the stigma as opposed to being like, no, of course you wouldn't. And I wouldn't do what you do. And that's okay. Because I want to maintain the hard conversations bit. Let's ask Alice, I'm going to bring you up again, of what are the hardest conversations that you can think of as a coach that you have to have? You don't have to always have them, but they can arise.
I think something that we've brought up on previous calls is when sometimes they want help with something that is like beyond our remit, whether it be they're struggling with their mental health, or they're having relationship issues, or they're leaning on you more than a coach. Now, don't get me wrong, I adore my athletes, and I would say like we're all besties, but it can be really difficult when you have to sort of send the message back and be like, I need you to seek professional help elsewhere. Like when someone's having a mental breakdown and I'm like, I actually don't know how I can help you from the other end of the phone right now. That's something that I think can be really, really challenging. I wanted to touch on something that he said about when you have one of the difficult conversations, that sometimes you feel good about having loads of difficult conversations. And I would say that like that doesn't happen for me. Like I have the awkward or the difficult conversation, I'm like, it's over. I don't want to go have another one. So I don't know if anyone else disagreed with that, but like, yeah, I'm not raring to go for another one. I'm just like, okay, let's take a breather now. Once I've had like that one difficult conversation, I'm like, I don't need another one for a little while now.
I mean, we'll see who puts their hand to go. I will say, like, if I have a hard conversation, I want to run through a wall, find the next person, have a shout out. Where I'm like, let's find every hard chat, get it done. I'm in the mood for them. But Adam, what were you going to say?
I was going to say about the apprehension or delayed action to said conversation. If you delay it, you sort of expand what the issue is rather than what the issue actually is. So the more you delay it, the bigger the problem, or the bigger the perceived problem, although the problem still remains the same. And also, if you delay it, the problem could generally expand as well. So I think action straight away, more often than not, would be the better route to go with these difficult conversations, and just being honest about it, rather than that delayed
I was
onset.
going to give a really acute example of just something that I think frustrates coaches because there's like a different narrative on media. So like, let's just take athlete goes off program and it's like, they're just going off program once. They're the sort of things that if you leave it and then it happens a second time, you're like, I can't really say anything this time. Then it gets to a third time, you're like, I have made this worse. What if I say it to them? What if they respond with just being annoyed at me? And as you say, that latency to have the conversation, I've now spent 3 days thinking about the conversation, assuming how they might respond. And then you go, we shouldn't do that. And they go, yeah, you're right. You're like, I lost 3 fucking days to this. And that's obviously a really small example, but there can be something if people aren't working to the standard you anticipated, aren't upholding values you anticipated. The time in not having the conversation reinforces the behavior of being like, it's now not your fault that you're not doing it. It's my fault because I didn't say anything. Brandon, were you going to weigh in on this? Still muted, bro.
Yes. I wanted to say, like, there's a quote that I really like, and I'm probably paraphrasing this to fit this example a little bit, but it is he is the fool who worries twice, and he is the fool who worries before it is requisite. And so if you're worrying about how a conversation is going to go, about how hard this conversation is going to be before it even happens, then you're a fool, and you've probably blown it to be something that it may not even be, right? It's more than likely not anywhere near as bad as what we think. Natural human tendency is to go to like worst case scenario for whatever reason. But then also, like, that's he who worries twice. So let's say you do worry and then it becomes as bad as you think it is, and now you've worried twice, or you're worrying once and the conversation's totally sweet. Like, you just have to say to them, hey, look, let's nip this in the bud, make sure this doesn't happen again, right? The conversation's not that bad. Maybe they don't like chat to you for a day, but they'll be sweet eventually. Do you know what I mean?
There's an extension of this that, so it's under the same section, but it doesn't really resonate with the topic. But there's the I can't remember what it comes under, but there's the example of like, if you go a mile or less, you'll walk. If you go a mile or more, you'll drive. And the idea of being taken away, being like, sometimes the situation being bad enough is what's needed for someone. I wanted to take this through the frame of injury, because I think it's one of the best ways we can kind of see it in people's training is when it forces people to change. I was actually going to ask him, I'm not going to, so we're going to use Lucy instead because she's just experienced this. Obviously, you've just experienced like pain and difficulty in training. Do you think it's made you step up to a different standard or step away from that standard?
Physically, I'm at a much higher standard than I have been, I think, all year. Mentally, I'm like hugely withdrawn at the moment. Like, I'm really struggling with the fact that what's usually my 4th warm-up set is now my working weight. And I think the only thing that is actually getting me through is the fact that I am so conscious and so deep in technically what I'm thinking about. I'm trying to push back all the negativity that I'm currently sat with. There's a few extra things kind of like going on as well, like in my head, but yeah, it's difficult, and it's difficult to remain positive. And at the start I was like, this is fine, this is a chance to do something new, and this is great. And I'm like 3 weeks in and I'm like, why haven't I added 30 kilograms on the bar yet? Why hasn't it gone away? I'm doing all the things right, but it's always a long process. And I'm so good at telling my guys that it's fine, you got to stick with it, and you just got to keep going, and you're doing all the right things. But I'm the worst at listening to my own advice.
I think
which is why I have you.
I think the injury is a really good frame for a lot of this. Is most athletes you see who get to a higher standard of the quality of intent, the quality of movement, their level of focus in training have been through something pretty substantial that set them back. And then it was, I don't want to be there again, and so I'm going to step up my standard. Ryan, is this something you've seen in your own training or like an athlete's training?
Oh, absolutely. Like, you look at my training, I've had peaks, I've had troughs. What's it been now? A year and a half, 2 years with my glute issue. Like, my mindset has changed quite a lot. I've been in this circumstance for that period of time. My mindset has changed from where it was to where I wanted to rush to get load on a bar. I'll use the example for one of my final lifts before Commonwealth. I think you remember.
I
And
remember.
I almost had a breakdown because I was like, this does not feel good. We've had to switch from conventional sumo a week before comp. Not an ideal situation. And I shouldn't have done it. But it was more a case of, well, I've done it before. Like, where's my capability? This is stupid that I can't do this. And then I went and done something stupid. Whereas my mindset now is, like, I look back on my own lifting videos. I've done it yesterday. How that would have made me feel then was, why aren't I there yet? And this overwhelming sense of defeat. Whereas now it's more a case of, I've hit that standard before. There isn't a reason why I can't hit that standard again. I'm 28 years old, very much so that, like, that mile to 2 mile thing. I'm 28 years old. I've got years of lifting left in me. It might take me a little bit longer, but I will get there eventually. And it just puts a whole different spin of perspective when you're in training, when you're trying different approaches, when you're being a little bit more patient. And sometimes when a session doesn't go great, it's almost like there's a win in there somewhere. So that shift of mindset.
I'm going to move on to the third one, unless anyone has something they really want to speak on that one. Golden. Okay, so this is only 3. We are half an hour in. The third, which was like the heavy burden of unmade decisions. So you're not stressed. You're stressed because of the decisions you're not making. And so commitment to anything is about the elimination of alternatives. Brandon, I wanted to see what your thoughts, just as a generic, before I go into anything specific, were on that one.
Burn the boats. Burn the boats. I am really like, there's a quote, I don't know where I heard this from. But it is, you've done half a job and you have a full smile on your face. I think that's really, really potent of, like, if you're gonna do anything, why would you half-ass it? Because you'll either be left with the regret of, oh, what would have happened if I gave it my all, or you'll be upset with the fact that you didn't achieve the thing that you wanted out of it anyway, and you'll always kind of be left with that looming in the background of, like, oh, what if I really actually tried with this?
I think that's one that, like, the biggest fear in, like, so whether it's, let's say, someone competing, it's not like whether or not you had the best day or worst day. It's the worst bit of being like, I could have made that better because I didn't commit, and being like, technique fell apart, and being like, I didn't listen to my coach for the fucking 9 months of him saying, like, let's do X, Y, Z. Yeah, loose. It just being like, if there are elements, that one wasn't your fault. You got hyped. You're not good at it. The amount of things of being like, these are things that are in my control, and you only ever look at them in hindsight of being like, wow, I ran at 50% and now I'm mad that I didn't have a perfect day. But what would actually happen if you went 100%? This is actually something that I think is substantially harder in powerlifting. So I want us to actually list. Come, I'm going to start with you as much as possible. What does 100% look like for a powerlifter? Brandon got the most menacing look. Sorry, but he's filing his hand, staring through his eyelids. Sorry, come. Yeah, 100%. What does that look like?
I wanted to start on the opposite end of that, where I think when people think 100%, they think balls to the walls. I'm going high intensity sessions, and I think 100% as a powerlifter is to fully commit to the technique, whether you're coached or not, but like learning the technique to become efficient with the big 3, and then doing everything outside of the gym to properly recover. And I'm not saying your life has to revolve around powerlifting, but doing everything you can with the circumstances that you're given to get the sessions in and still maintain relative intent behind it.
On top of that, Adam, what are you going to add to the list?
So when committing 100%, what comes to mind is Agata, top of the sport. And so obviously giving your best, in my eyes, isn't 100%. Someone that lives for the sport is giving 100%. So every single day is about that. So that's what 100% means to me. Obviously, it's more than okay if you're not heavily invested, you're just doing it for fun. But my perception is every single waking moment is devoted to that sport. And obviously, Agata represents that. Everything is about it, hitting the training metrics, hitting the nutrition metrics, hitting the externals, and everything about that resembles what 100% is. So that's my perspective of what it is.
I think there's a disparity here, right? We're talking between 100% of what is possible and 100% of what is possible for you. Because I would agree of being like the 100%. Sheldon and I will go to you straight after, just so you don't have to hang around for ages. But me and Brandon had a bit of a chat on this one of being like that we refer to 100% differently, and I'll probably let him do this because I know he'll be more passionate about it in the subject with me of being like what consistency means towards the idea of being 100% and what ticking boxes means. And being like, there are two sides of this that we always try to do. We always try to be like, you can give 100% of what you have today, and that might just be 10% and so on. And being like, or there is the other side of that. There is, what does 100% really look like? What does it actually mean across nutrition, externals, your training, the sessions, the warm-ups, the quality of it, the checking in process, the understanding what your coach's decisions are, if you have one, which you will have one because you're going 100%. Cheryl, what are you going to add before I go any further?
You literally read my mind and kind of stole my point there, because I was going to say, I feel like people conflate sort of, you know, getting everything right with the perfection within consistency. And as you've just said really well, consistency is not actually perfection. It's very much individual. It's very subjective to the person and what they are able to give. And sometimes it is often just that mind frame of like, we've had this discussion before, like I said, I feel like I've done everything I can. And then you immediately just said to me, you know, did you do this? And I went, no. So it reframed it for me. Like, you know, am I doing everything I can? And I think there was a quote with it. I know probably bastardized this as well. And it was, no work is wasted, which I particularly enjoyed. And that was framed around, you know, I am not the, sorry, I'm the output, not the outcome. So it's being part of the process, not striving for that absolute perfection. It's sort of, you know, learn how to be rewarded by the work within that as well.
There's a bit there that plays into the other conversation, just the other end of hard conversation, saying to an athlete where they're like, I'm not making progress, I've done everything. Like, what's the willingness to go, okay, let's list everything. And now you start ticking boxes for me. I referred to this on a podcast of spokes of a wheel, of being like, I'll give you a hollow tube, and they'll be like, that's turning up. And like every spoke on that is the intent, the warm-ups, all of the other elements. That's how you build the density of a wheel that is reliable. And like, how many spokes do you really have going for you? And don't be wrong, there are reasons that some people can't put every spoke in and being like, okay, I have a full-time job, I can't train at the right time of day. But you can train, and you can train these days per week. And are you doing those sessions to the best of your ability? You can poke at those things of being like, there is a lot more in your control than you kind of want to take accountability of sometimes. This is actually the section that did have the name the fear and they have the power, so I'll skip past that. But this is probably something that comes into the coaching peripheral of on inquiry calls, right? The time thinking about the thing would be gained back by making the choice. And so this being like people being like, oh, maybe I should get a coach, maybe I should compete. Ryan, I'm sure like inquiry calls, you probably experienced this of people being like they're thinking about getting a coach and then they eventually join anyway, right? I'm guessing this is something that you've come across a few times, like what the latency looks like.
Oh yeah, you get it all the time, don't you? It's that understanding of like, is this right for me? They know it's right for them. They know they want to do it, but they just want to get an answer from you, in my opinion, anyway. And this comes down to that decision making that we've spoken about before. They want you to make the choice for them.
I think some of the most successful athletes I've worked with, so like I make a point on inquiry calls, it's you come back to me and you decide. Most of the most successful athletes told me on the call, where it was like, no, I came to you because I knew I wanted to do this. I didn't come to you to fucking discuss this. Like, I want to find out what you do. Yeah, I'm happy with that. We're going to do this. One of my favorite examples, I think I've told you this before, Ryan, the call I had with Amelia, when she signed up to me, she messaged me on Instagram and told me I'd be her coach. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an inquiry call. It was a message being like, hey, so you're going to coach me. And it's people who they've already made the choice before they came to the phone call. Speed of decisions. I don't even want to go through that. Is there anything on this section I wanted to speak to before I move on? No. Wonderful. All right. 4. I have 2 different definitions of every section. I don't know how that's happened. So the overcoming fear of what people think. We've kind of spoken to this in brief. What about as an athlete? has anyone experienced like it weighing into whether it's competing or training, the people you're up against, what people think if you do show up or don't show up, the weight of people's opinions as an athlete?
I posted one of my threads and reshared it to my story, which was, you're afraid of being seen as a tryhard by people who don't care for you and aren't rooting for your success, so why do you care? Like, there's so much about being an athlete in general where, like, if you're coming into the gym and your headphones are on and whatever type of lifter you are, whether you're a hype lifter or a focus lifter or whatever, you're just getting in the zone and you're being very, very meticulous about the way that you're going about your training. Like, there are so many people that can look at you and just go, oh, look at this guy, he's just some sort of try hard man, what's going on with this dude? Do you know what I mean? And that's so fine, because the majority of the people who think those things are, forgive me, lifetime intermediates. Like, it is legitimately that very thing of being so meticulous that takes you from being a lifetime intermediate to a more advanced lifter. And it is one of the biggest things that, like, when you start taking stewardship of the things that we've been talking about, that you have probably more control than what you're willing to take accountability for. When you start doing that, that is really where people are like, oh, this dude's a tryhard, he's this, he's that, he's whatever. But those opinions don't matter, because you never really receive hate from people who are doing better than you.
Love that as a cliche. One of the other sentences that they said within it was, which is the bit I circled, it's really hard to hate close up, which I kind of love, of being like there. So we spoke about the fact that, like, by giving an opinion, by trying to be overly successful, by being overt to the things that you believe in, like, you're going to have annoyed people. But like, if you spent time in a room with them, like, how many people do you know you don't like online? I mean, like, but if I spent like an hour in a room with you and I understood you, I probably wouldn't. Like, probably wouldn't be much of an issue. And I think it applies for the social media stuff as well. And a lot of, whether it's coaches in the sport or positions where I'm like, I don't get why you would do that, I think you're a dick. And then spend time with them and be like, okay, you're just a person being a person. They're talking about the just making decisions with people's opinions. Perfect conditions are exactly where you are. Every position has a pro and a con. I didn't know if I want to take this as an athlete or as a coach. Lucy, you're nodding. What perspective did you look at that from?
This was actually me today. Like, I don't know if you're aware, but it's a bit hot at the moment. So I've really been enjoying, like, my sleep. And I got home from work and I was like, I could go for a nap right now. But if I don't go train now, then I'm gonna basically not train. So I went, basically cup half full. I went, did my session, and I was one working set in, and I messaged Callum and I was like, I didn't want to be here, but I'm here now and I'm proud of myself. And that, to me, is, that's not a negative. Like, it's not a negative that I didn't want to be there. There are positives out of that session. You know, I didn't give it my best because my mindset wasn't 100%, but the effort that I was able to give was 100%. My resilience has improved. My dedication has been proven today. And I also now feel better about myself, and I feel proud of myself that, despite how I felt, like, I changed the narrative. And I think for so many people that, like we've talked about this previously, that, you know, you play on your externals, and I have done that. Monday, Tuesday, didn't train, too hot. Was it too hot? Or was I just being soft? Was I just not feeling resilient enough to commit? And then all of a sudden you get told that the people that you want to beat, they're doing it and you're not. And all of a sudden I'm turning up day in, day out. Sometimes you just need that push off a cliff for
Also,
that, like, mindset to change.
this is one of those things where obviously how we speak to every athlete does vary. I just want to clarify that I did specifically to say to Lucy, she said about training, and I was like, fuck the AC, and she, as in air conditioning, she put, okay, if I die, it's on you. And I put, I bet the people you want to beat would be training. And then I just got okay, I'm going to the gym, and that was it. Of being like, like, obviously there are different situations, but like sometimes the externals, like, they're not problems, they're puzzles. This is something I was actually voicing to Rach earlier, of like, there are problems where it's like The gym doesn't have a bench. How do I bench? That's a problem. The gym doesn't have a bench I'm used to. Bro, it's just a fucking puzzle. Like, go figure out what to do with that situation. Like, it's hot. Take water, chalk your t-shirt. Like, at the end of the day, like, if you can work around the thing, it's not really a problem unless you're choosing to put it in between you and what you want to achieve. Cheryl, what's the thing you want to say? Go ahead.
So it made me think of one of the quotes that actually it's probably the best one in this that I really, really liked and resonated me with. You're not afraid of failing, you're afraid of what other people think if you fail. But if you're afraid of that, imagine what they will think of you when you aren't even trying. Oh yeah, they aren't. So just to something that happened to me the other day that I think is really relevant is I had a call with Callum. And then we didn't actually talk about this, so this is a story for you as well. And then I went away and I did a load of work, and I got so overwhelmed by what I didn't know, which was part of our discussion, that I got really upset and I burst into tears. And I was so weighed down with everything that I just felt like I was absolutely failing. And I spoke to my partner, and his words were so beneficial to me, because in essence what he said was, this is absolutely normal, this is what it takes to be a winner, it takes being upset, it takes emotion and all of this. And then he said how it feels to not feel like this is what it feels like to be a loser. And that sounds really, really harsh, but it really resonated with me because it's true. And I was just like, if I was comfortable and I didn't feel like this ever, I would be a loser in my own eyes, because I'm not doing anything, I'm not pushing towards failure, and essentially no one is thinking of me. And I used to be so concerned with what people thought of me, and now I just genuinely hope people don't even notice me, because I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Brandon, I feel like you wanted to speak on that.
Oh man. I'm gonna waffle if I start this too hard, but
I'll cut you
what
off.
I will say, yeah, please do. What I will say is, like, I think that a lot of the time, you know, this has kind of come up indirectly a few times, but like reframing your suffering. So reframe it, like if it is someone's opinion that genuinely does get to you, or like if you're feeling noticed or if you're feeling overwhelmed, like reframing that pain can be so valuable. A lot of the time we talk about like comparison is the thief of joy in sport. I'm gonna make it brief, I promise. And I agree. I do fully agree. Comparison is the thief of joy, but comparison also the thing usually that gives you the pain, that leaves you with an ultimatum, that gives you the same outcome irrespective of what you choose. That is, you either quit and you have no grounds to compare yourself to anyone anymore, or you become so good that you have no reason to compare yourself to anyone anymore. And so irrespective of what pain you're feeling, it very much comes down to, okay, this person can do this, you can't. What are you going to do about that? What are you actually going to change to make it so that that is not so?
Credit for not going on further. That was nice. End of a movie. The thing I want to speak to there, especially for you, Cheryl, just being like, you know, we've spoken about the Dunning-Kruger effect of like at the beginning you think you know everything, so you don't think there's nothing you don't know, and so you don't feel uncomfortable in that situation. Only the person who gives a fuck sits and has a cry of being like, holy shit, there's so much I don't know. Like, I have done interns with coaches, I've spoke to many coaches, I have had conversations online with people being like, oh, I knew that, and being like, there's a sea of shit you don't know. Like the file in my junk folder has the volume of knowledge of some coaches of being like, the amount of things you do not know like should make you uncomfortable. If it doesn't, then it's like, well, then you don't appreciate how good you can be at this. And like the Cheryl I met, who knew nothing by comparison to this Cheryl now, of being like, now I know a shit ton and it makes me uncomfortable, there's a lot more to learn. Like, what a privileged position of being like, I'm very aware of the work that's ahead of me, and like the privilege of suffering of being like, I'm willing to do that work, I'm willing to do the journey between those 2 points. Love that from you though, and also the honesty. And so I'm going to ask a really honest question, because this is on the 5th point. This is actually the thing that I think is really important for people as a whole, and actually leads into something that I'm struggling with personally. But this talks about, in life you must choose your regrets. And Jordan Peterson talks about this of the rat in a tube. I won't over lengthen this, but effectively Running towards the smell of cheese runs pretty hard. Running away from the smell of a cat, it runs even harder. And being like, people run away from fear or pain more than they run towards the thing they want. And so whether it's in a competition setting of being like, I want to be the best because I don't want to be X. And normally we frame the thing and we focus on what it is we're running towards, but we kind of don't want to acknowledge the thing we're running away from. I've asked many people this question. Only one person has just said running towards ever, and it is Alice. And it fucking freaks me out because everyone else I know, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, is running away. Just every person here, in general, everything, whether it's your pursuit in your career as an athlete, do you think you are running away or do you think you are running towards? Anyone who thinks they have an answer, stick your hands up. Cheryl, go for it.
I think I can honestly say recently it's very much changed to running towards. But had you asked me a couple of months ago, it would have been running away. I think a few things have absolutely changed this, and you will probably know best as my coach. But I think injury changed this a lot for me because it reframed so much. And like Ryan put really well earlier, is actually that I was so greedy. I was very, very greedy and ungrateful for what I had before I injured myself. And when I injured myself, I then start revisiting, and Ryan's nodding, these numbers that I overlooked, and now they just fill me with pure joy. But they also terrify me. But I keep running towards them. And I messaged you yesterday after squatting and just told you how happy I was. And you said, this is another beautiful example of why you need to stop listening to your doubts. So I think I can wholeheartedly say that I have started running towards.
Before we continue this, I will say either answer is great. It literally doesn't matter. There's no negative to either end. Because Cheryl, I'll pose back to you, to which I'm not even going to let you answer. Do you think that means you are running away from the feeling of being injured when you were incapable and running like away from that feeling as opposed to running towards feeling capable?
What am I now?
Yeah. Do you think you're running away from what it felt like to be injured or running towards another end? I'll let you think on it before you don't worry about like jumping to an answer.
Yeah,
Well, to know if they're running away or towards.
I think so. A scenario recently that I've been running towards is fear, like directly head on, and the outcome of that has been so positive. And the example is my squat, although it's just lifting a weight. There's not much to it, but the mental side of it is something that I've been working so hard on, and like seeking discomfort. And that's the whole purpose of these previous 2 blocks with the squat. And for context, I squat alone in a soundproof gym. No one can hear me. If something goes wrong, obviously I've got the safeties there, but with this kind of load, shit will hit the fan. And whenever I got to a weight of like 270 or north of 270, the capacity is there to do more. But whenever I got to that sort of weight, I would just shit myself, and I would just leave the top set, or it just went shit. It's just terrible. But recently, it's like I deliberately slowed the descent to be so uncomfortable that now I could load unfathomable weights on that bar and just feel every moment of that descent and that pain. And now I'm so confident with it. Like I've deliberately been training with no music as well, just to really channel that. So I've, in all aspects of my sport, I've just ran head on, and there's been such a positive outcome on that. So there's other areas that I want to take that into. So there's just one example, but then it's like, how can you translate that into other movements or other areas of your life?
Because I just became very aware, I've got 8 minutes left. If anyone very succinctly want to reply to that, or should we just move to the next one? Everyone can spend some time with that as a thought prospect then. Let it haunt you like it did me. Oh, and just to clarify, the reason I'm really struggling with it is because for the first time, I'm not running away from something, and now I'm stuck for motivation. And I spent a decade running away, and now I'm like, guys, what do we do when that runs out? We can solve that another time and do therapy as a group. Okay, so fucking rough. I had the 3 traits of successful people thing. We're not going to get through like a quarter of this, so I'm not going to cover that either. The work hard at one thing for a year and see what happens. that I wanted to focus on within that was the quote of the difference between being nervous and being excited before you do something is your level of preparation. I'm guessing as coaches, we've all seen this. Let's go, Alice. 2 comps. Can you remember one where you were specifically a lot more like anxious, nervous for it, and one where you were just substantially more excited, and what relevant factors played into that?
Specifically before comp or on comp day?
Either, where it was clearly like preparation had played into that in some sense.
So Euros a few weeks ago, I was obviously incredibly nervous about the time that I was lifting and having no control over that at all. And then another one where I was excited. Probably the qualifier for that comp I was really, really excited for. Prep was amazing. Yeah, everything went really, really well. And yeah, I was just buzzing to get back on the platform.
Is there a time where someone's been like their preparation or what they put into it specifically shifted how they felt about the competition? Like they were aware that they were just substantially more nervous than they were excited? Wow, this is really just only me then.
I think there's obviously you harness or embrace the anxiety of the competition, but then there's a specific thing I want to mention. Kind of is a tangent, but it's how Alex explains his preparation to a very vast audience. Is it 500,000 people? I think it was.
Yeah, the next thing is more so.
But the preparation he put into that was every day for a year, 6 hours in the morning, he'll go through his presentation. And then that ensures that day runs smoothly. And I think in all scenarios, whether you've done 50 competitions or one, there's gonna be a level of apprehension or anxiety that you're gonna feel, and that's good, and that's what you should embrace for that competition. But then I think there's another sort of area in that is if you didn't complete the preparation or the prep to the best of your ability, you're nervous for the wrong reason.
Yeah, I think there's a disparity here between nervous and anxious, right? So like anxiety, obviously, just being like all of the things, like trying to think about the day in itself and obviously wanting the best outcome of that. But the nervous for it being like, I don't know if my squat's going to be good. I don't know if the technique's going to hold up. And like, I didn't really, and then all of the things that play backwards in reverse from that point of like, did I do everything that I could have done? Did I do everything in preparation for that? Because like for this call, I'll say I was initially nervous because I didn't listen to the call, the video, until I listened to it 8 separate times. And after 8 separate times, like I can sit down and have a conversation with Brandon on Alex Hormozy and probably speak for 3 days because this is all we consume. And that being like the level of things you put in, how many times have you focused on your cues when you were doing your warm-ups? Holy shit, it didn't stick for your top set. You were nervous. Of course you were. You made shitty jumps. You didn't apply yourself and you didn't focus until your last warm-up. And be like, there are so many opportunities in powerlifting specifically where your preparation, whether it's in that single session, in that block, or it's in the entire cycle of training, that you can take full accountability of preparation and nerves disappear where you're like, I can do this shit. Of course I can. I did it every fucking day. I did it every warm-up. I'm so annoyed that we're only at 0.6 and I had 4 minutes. Is anyone going to have to dip in 4 minutes? If you do, just see yourself out and we'll just continue a little bit, but we won't go too far. Ryan, I'm going to ask you the next one then. I'm going to skip straight to 0.7. Oh, no, this one's just dark. No, let's try this. The world hurt me, I'll hurt it back versus it hurt me, I won't let it hurt anyone else. Ryan, what is it that made you want to be a coach?
I'm going to be honest, I struggle with this one. Of course. In the sense of, you see all these role models, and they have a dark place somewhere within their life. From what I can think of, I don't have a dark place that I can use as like a power source. I don't have that. I can't relate to it. So I found it really difficult, and I need to listen to it again to make my mind up. So I'm going to be honest, I don't have an answer to that.
Can I speak to this one for you? Because I remember the phone call we had after I asked you to be a coach for the brand. And you were in the car and we had a conversation about this, and it was the belief in you to do a thing because you came from a place where people didn't do very much, whether it was family, and it was there are these restrictions or boundaries or assumptions of being like, I don't know if I can get to that if that's where I'm going to go. And being like, maybe it's not like the world hurt me, but you were told a narrative for a while of like, there's only so much I will do, and now you spend your entire life telling people they can do anything.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the same narrative.
Perhaps if you take a perspective of my upbringing wasn't special, but it wasn't bad in any way, shape, or form. But perhaps because I didn't have anything, or because my parents or anything else didn't have anything special, I had nothing to strive towards. So I found it very difficult for myself to see myself in a position of leadership or a position of, I can make a difference to someone else's life, if that makes sense. I had a very I know what I want to do. I have no idea how to do it. If you could call that a fear, that's probably something that I need to delve a little bit into about myself. But that's probably the only thing, as you said, the conversation that we had, we probably need to revisit that. But
I think because I know you're going to dip in a minute, the bit I'll leave it on specifically for you is being like, I think this is what makes you one of the kindest, most humble coaches that any of us have probably ever known. Is every time there's a leadership opportunity, Ryan's going, me, really? As opposed to someone who goes, I should lead, who fucking sucks, because they see themselves as that position, as opposed to the person who goes, I'll step up to it, but I don't think it should be me, which I think is what makes the best coaches. Is not because I believe I'm the best athlete or the best in the world. It's because I believe I will go above and beyond to help those people. So it's a nice reminder to Ryan. He gets a compliment on the call that he cannot take very comfortably. Did anyone else, rather than that bit alone, so the use of pain versus passion? This is a big one for me. Brownie, you got a filthy smile. Flirt with me with your opinion. What are you going to say?
Finish your thought first, and then I'll chime in.
No, I'm torn on this of being like if you listen to someone like Simon Sinek speak, he says about the fact that a why always comes from a positive at its core. And I adore Simon Sinek. Bye, Ryan. And I disagree. And I think there is a degree of pain that people come away from. I've seen different competitors, people who draw on pain, people who draw on their passion. And I will say that people who draw on pain just push a little bit harder, where it's like, sometimes it's that, no, I don't want to be in, but like, no, you're going to work fucking hard. I'm going to use an example of someone who probably doesn't resonate with pain very much at all, which is Alice, where at competition, like getting an oomph out of her until the last deadlift, when it was a chat of being like, okay, a little bit of fucking rile. And then she pulled the last deadlift that I don't think she thought she was going to pull. And being like, I think passion counts for a lot of wanting to be something, belief in something. And belief is the probably cornerstone of the other side of the argument that I do agree with. But I think pain can be so constant that you can draw on it quicker and easier, and it's so easy to access. Whereas pain has a lot of belief, usually founded in things you haven't experienced. Whereas pain is the experience you've had. Brandon, we got podcasts at the weekend, so don't go too hard, but hit me.
I probably, not to be like so middle of the road and so nuanced, but I feel like to be truly, like really, really, truly passionate about anything is painful. Because if you are genuinely to the depths of what passion means, or passionate rather means, it will be constantly and unceasingly highlighted to you that you are not where you would like to be. And that is totally fine, but it is a very painful thing. And like, I think nearly anyone here can resonate with that. Like, full disclosure, Lucy, I went on to Europe in powerlifting, and I was like, 524. And like seeing Lucy, how well decorated Lucy is as an athlete, seeing how long she's been doing this for, the amount of international prestige that she has, I looked at that and I was like, okay, right. So I know where I'm not. And that's okay. Like, again, this is the same argument of like, there's pros and cons to every position, right? Lucy's definitely probably tired of people blowing smoke just because she's there, or other people who still doubt her despite her massive stack of evidence. But any one of us who are incredibly passionate can look to, be it as a coach, be it as an athlete, and it can eternally be highlighted to you that you are trying to raise a bar. Passion doesn't just mean, like, as an athlete, if you're passionate, that doesn't mean I'll hit 500 dots. Passionate means I am constantly trying to push the ceiling of what is physically and biologically possible as a human being within powerlifting. Like that is not some arbitrary preconceived number that we can just go, yeah, I'll do 500 dots and then I'm done.
Lucy, I want to know how, like, because I could see it on your face. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I was like, forgot we were recording this. I generally had to pull myself together for a little bit then. Not because you were being really nice that made me emotional, but like, I've always considered myself a kind of somewhat unique athlete because I never came from pain. I never came from an eating disorder. I never came from someone that like had to go and find inner strength by becoming physically stronger. It was an accident. I couldn't do maths. Like that's how I fell into this sport. I just loaded a bar wrong. And for some reason I was somewhat good at it and I've just kind of continued. So I think like what you said originally, that no one is really passionate because there always is an element of pain that they're not where they want to be. I am passionate. Like I have no pain. I like the pain I feel is that I'm not where I want to be. But that's not painful or more painful than the passion that I have. Like I want to be at SBD Sheffield. I want to be the best in the world. And it's like I feel like I'm a 5-year-old. Like I want to be a princess, but that's where I've always wanted to get to. Like I don't turn up for no reason. I don't just do it because it keeps you fit and healthy and whatever. Like no, I want to be the best. And like I could look back at all of the things that I've done and like thank you for going on Open Lister and like having a bit of a Google, but like that's still not good enough. That's still not the level that I want to be at. Like I watched Open Worlds a few weeks ago, and Alba Bostrom, I competed against her. Like I was there when she first went international, and she came first, and I came second, and then she came second, and I came third. And I've constantly been trying to keep up with her, and I mean, she kind of left me in the dust a little bit, but like that doesn't slow me down. Like that has increased my passion. That hasn't given me pain. That's given me more passion. So I've always like slightly considered myself as someone that's unique in this situation because like the majority of people that I've spoken to have come from an element of pain. And maybe that's why I'm not where I want to be right now. Maybe that's why I haven't yet. But like I can tell you right now that my passion, and maybe I'm just a unique in this kind of sense, but like my passion is, I want to say equal to your amount of pain, but I couldn't say that for through and through because I guess I've just been fortunate enough to not have the pain. Maybe I wish I had. Maybe I should have. Maybe I might just get some now.
I think the difficulty with this sort of thing is like there are people who very clearly draw on pain, people who very clearly draw on a form of passion, and it's so unmistakably hard to understand what the other person experiences. Like I would love to spend a day in Alice's brain to understand how she perceives things so fucking smiley all the time, and I live perpetually as a realist or a pessimist, and like will always be sat with the things I want to fix. And so like I wouldn't say one's necessarily more powerful than the other. It's just that those perceptions are so different and as a constant, because I draw on pain as the only thing. The passion thing I find is shakeable or passing. And so like whatever the pain is, I can maintain that, which is probably not a good perspective. But I've also worked with enough athletes to be like, Lucy, you're not alone in that. Like I know Alice. I know many people who will they were like, I'm just loving this. Like, this is I just want to be better, and being like, okay, like we really want to push for this. Like that doesn't work for me. They don't care. Like it just doesn't resonate with like an intensity. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to cap your potential or not, but it just is different. We extend that one further. So I will need to cut this off at some point. I could do this all day, and we're at point 8 out of like fucking 23. So I want to skip a couple, which breaks my heart because I really want to speak on some of them. But the last bit is you already achieved things you said would make you happy. And this is probably the hardest one of whether it's in prep for a competition or seeing athletes be like, this was the thing that you said, like these were the goalposts, be like, what if I just PB these lifts? Okay, well, actually now I can win, and now I want to win, and be like, actually I don't just want to win, I can win best lifter. And so this, as it's termed, the hedonic treadmill of being like this constant uphill of nothing is enough, because you always need to move the goalpost, you always need to move it further. And there's this really difficult relationship between being like, yeah, you fucking should, because otherwise you'll live in complacency, versus but you have to be able to signpost the moments. Dropping a reel on this next week, real proud of it. But the idea of being like, how do you celebrate those moments without immediately moving on to the next thing? Like, we all witness this in our own training or in our athletes, of being like, how do you make something enough whilst also highlighting it's not enough? Go on, Brandon.
I'm so sorry you've heard my voice so much today.
I knew it's this cool, man. I knew it would.
Yeah. David O'Connor, coach down south in Dublin, really good mate of mine. He taught me a principle from Hormozy that I hadn't heard at the time, that was basically applied to powerlifting, which is, are you playing an infinite or a finite game?
I just want to clarify, that's from Simon Sinek, and Alex Hormozy took it. It's so important because he does it so well. But go on.
Good. I'm glad that, like, credit where credit is literally due. But the difference is, like, a finite game is, oh, I will play until, like, my example, I get 500 odds, right? I'll play until I get 500 odds, and then I'll be satisfied, and then I'll leave. Lucy is playing an infinite game to some degree, I would imagine, because she wants to be the best in the world. That will constantly shift as a natural part of that goal, and thereby she's playing a much more closer to infinite. I would actually still say that that's a finite game, but it very much depends on, I personally think, what you're in it for, not necessarily why you're here, but what you're in it for and what you're getting out of it. To the point that you've already achieved goals that you said would make you happy. Correct. That happens a lot of the time. I do, however, really, really strongly believe that chasing happiness in general is such a flawed thing. I was so happy and so content when I was a lowlife 5 years ago. I was happy, I was comfortable, I did all the things that were just immediately pleasing to me, and happiness was the very, very truth of the matter. However, purpose and chasing purpose was something entirely different. And it is something that pushed me into a great deal of discomfort, but through which I have experienced, like, joy. And I think experiencing joy or seeking joy, like, when I think of Alice, Alice is like, what's that
She's called
Pixar
Joy
movie?
in Inside Out.
Yes, Inside Out. Thank you
Joy.
so much.
I
That
immediately
is
knew what you
Alice.
meant.
Alice is joy, right? And that's what I mean. There's a very, very distinct difference between happiness and joy. Joy is an infinite game. Happiness is a finite game.
Fuck, we could do this all day, and I won't. It just, on my whiteboard, it does say, mine says, we do not pursue happiness, we pursue opportunity to be happy. And I have a big thought on this, and I won't go into it because I will do this for half an hour. But I have real issue with the pursuit of happiness, even the film. Is there anything anyone wanted to, like, add as a final thing before we'll stop for now? We'll call it a day, and we can do another one of these another time. But also, don't worry, I also wasted a shit ton of notes on this one. No? Okay. Well, anyone who disagreed with anything we said, keep it to yourself. Enjoy that. Feel free to comment below wherever this goes. All the best.